Come to me, Dark Warriors. Battle awaits us.
It's Sidequest Enthusiast coming at you live with that new episode plus smell. I'm your host, Kyle V. Hiller, and I'm joined by my fellow questers, Mina Rankins.
Hey.
And Anairis Quinones.
Hello.
And on this episode of Sidequest Enthusiast, we're talking the next generation of consoles. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S and all the other alphabet dropped last week. Are we enthusiastic? Are you? I don't know, but I do know that we're also going to dive into what we want from the next generation, specifically what we want as gamers of color, as LGBTQ gamers, and all the intersection therein. But before we press start, let's check our settings. What's really good, y'all? Let's introduce ourselves real quick since it's the first episode, before we get to the heart of the story of the episode of the podcast here. Who are you? How are you living? And what's been on your mind? We'll do alphabetically. Anairis, tell us about who you are.
Okay, well, I am most well known for being a voice actress. If you are active in the nerd scene, you know me as someone who has voiced Nessa in Pokemon Twilight Wings and Mirko in My Hero Academia. In terms of like doing voiceover for video games, I officially I've only done Smite. I did a lot of indie games back in the day before I entered the industry. Really love doing indie games. I think one of my favorites was Asagao Academy. Um, and yeah. And I also did Monster Camp recently. I forgot that came out. But yeah. And I also write. I used to write for visual novels, a couple back in the day for NaNoWriMo and all that. Or not NaNoWriMo, but it was a different one. NaNoReno, that's what it was. And that was really fun. And that's something I want to get back into once my voice acting life chills out. But yes, I am mainly a voice actress and writer, and I love video games so much.
Yay. Let's rewind real quick, though. There's a NaNoWriMo for video games?
Yes. So
I did not know this.
it is because I used to be really active on Lemnasoft forums, and on I think it's the month of March or February, I forget which one. They have NaNoReno, which is you have a month to make a visual novel, because that's a REMP engine. And I was
there it is.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I was
there you
wondering
go.
where the Reno came
There,
from.
there
Okay,
it
got
is. And yeah, I was a writer for this one visual novel called Echoes of the Evolved. I forget how it went, but yeah, it was like this like very gritty war fantasy visual novel that we got done within the month. We needed a bit of extra time, so we didn't get it out like right at the end of the month, but it was nice, and it was like crash course in like that crunch time that devs need, I guess. But yeah,
Right.
it was fun.
That sounds fun. I might have to jump in on that next time around.
Yes, we can collab together.
Yo, let's totally do that. Love it. Already making moves here.
Yeah.
Mina, what's good?
Hi, I'm Mina. I'm a Philadelphia-based writer and editor. I love video games because I'm really interested in interactive narratives and participatory stories where reader engagement changes the story that happens. I'm also really interested in plot and character-based video games, but I also really love something that's like a beautiful visual experience, which is why Sayonara Wild Heart is one of my favorite video games of all time. It's just a really fun thing to play and to listen to. It's actually one of my favorite albums of 2019, as well as one of my favorite games. You might know me from some of my voice work where I scream hot takes about Monster Camp, but that's mostly if you're within my immediate vicinity.
Wait, hot takes about Monster Camp? What are these hot takes?
My hot take is I love Monster Camp.
Oh my gosh. Have you heard my characters in that?
No, I haven't played Monster Camp as of yet. I don't actually have a console right now, but I preemptively love Monster Camp because I love Monster Prom.
Oh my gosh. You have to tell me how you feel about it and how you feel about
already very positive.
Wanda and Belle, those two. Especially Wanda. Wanda is so like she is just so chill. Anyways, yeah, awesome.
I think we're gonna have to do a Monster Camp, Monster Prom episode in the future.
Yeah.
Like, let's put that in the Google Doc of ideas right now. As soon as I make that Google Doc, because we are just starting on episode 1 here
Yeah.
at SQE Sidequest Enthusiast. I'm your host, Kyle V. Hiller. I am a writer, also Philly based, West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playgrounds where I spent most of my days. Actually, not because I'm an introvert, because I grew up playing Super Nintendo all day,
Ooh.
and that's me. I was that kid that, see, okay, back in the day, I'm going to show my age here real quick. This was before we had things like the internet. So I had a little tape recorder, and I would record all the songs that I would like from my TV as I'm playing them. So I would
Wow.
play, I don't know, Super Mario RPG, and you could just kind of sit there and just let the music play. And I
Mhm.
would record every song that way, and I would have a whole collection of it. I don't have that tape recorder anymore, but it's one of those things that I wish I see. If there's such thing as a heaven, and you go die there, and you go there and you see all the things from like your life that you just don't have anymore. I really hope that tape recorder is there and has all the tapes that I recorded on. Because we also had voicemail and had the little mini tapes. So I would just like, okay, cool. We don't need voicemail. No one calls us. We got caller ID. No one picking up the phone. So let's just record video songs on here. And it was great. And that's sort of my origin story when it comes to video games. And here we are in 2020 with a podcast, Sidequest Enthusiast. And I'm really enthused about this because I've always wanted to talk about video games in such a way that we are talking about inclusivity. We're talking about all those good things about diversity and really trying to elevate those voices and things like that, including ourselves, and just talking about video games because I think my experience as, a Black person, video games are so much a part of my identity. And I really feel like they've really forged so many great connections for me over the years. So I'm learning as I get older just how important that is. And it's not something to shake a stick at. And I think a lot of people don't really realize just how important and relevant video games are in that way. People not turn up their noses, but they kind of raise an eyebrow like, video games do this for you? And I'm like, yeah, video games are the reason why I'm a writer because, I just saw myself in video games in ways that I didn't see myself in other mediums. So yeah, that's me. And for us, we are among a new generation of gaming.
Mhm.
So let's jump right into the topics here. We're going to be talking about more or less PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. They're coming out. They're here. If you've got one, that's pretty dope. I drove past the Best Buy yesterday as I prepared for, lockdown
Uh-huh.
2020 part 2.
Did it ever really
And
stop?
I did not stop because I'm like, do I really want to spend $500 right now on a new console? That seems very fiscally irresponsible of me.
Mhm.
But I don't know. You can get on a payment plan for the Xbox Series X if you want to, and that's really tempting. But
How you know your console is too expensive is if people need payment plans.
It's like
listen,
phones now.
there's nothing wrong. Okay, payment plans are interesting. They're just like they're the new layaway. And see,
Mhm.
back in the day, if you put things in layaway, you didn't get it. You would just have to pay it off in time, which is cool, back in the 90s. But the fact that you can like pay off a console, it does feel a little strange, right? Like it's just not particularly economical, especially in 2020 where, everybody's struggling out here. Um,
I feel like we're used to getting because we always get consoles around the holidays, so the idea of having a console on a payment plan is a little weird just because, like, for me personally, I'm very used to getting my consoles for Christmas, right? And it's just like a one and done deal. This is yours. Now you have to buy the games, and that's all on you, you know? So payment plans, I guess it's more it's better for I think older generations for sure, who just can't really afford to drop that much money all at once. Uh, so yeah, it isn't a bad thing. It's just interesting, that we
Yeah,
have payment
I mean,
plans
as
now.
an accessibility feature, I think being able to pay in small installments versus having to have a lump sum all at once can be very helpful. But I think the fact that it's so expensive that is a realistic and necessary aspect of purchasing a console, which is not even a game itself. It's just like the computer is is kind of wild
Yeah.
to me. And I know that, you know, it's different for everybody, and I'm not like necessarily judging that, but I do think that like having the upfront cost of several $100s before you can even play anything is somewhat absurd. And especially as often as consoles come out, and not necessarily
Mhm.
become obsolete, but like they lose the edge of being new so frequently, and like
Yeah.
people are just constantly buying consoles. It kind of rubs me the wrong way.
And it's only been 5 years since the PS4, or since the last generation, rather. I think in PlayStation because that's all I get. But, yeah, it's only been 5 years. That's crazy.
So actually, it's as we're recording this on November 15th. 7 years ago today, in 2013, the PlayStation 4 dropped.
Was it 7
And I
years?
just did it. It's been 7 years.
Wow.
And I just did a quick Google to see the history of gaming console prices at launch. And it's very, very interesting to see how that has swelled. The original Nintendo Entertainment System, which released October 18th in 1985. I'm not sure if that's just a Japan release or um, a Western release. I'm not sure. But it was $199 with the packing game with Super Mario Brothers, and it was $249 if you got the Zapper and Duck Hunt and a couple other games.
When
I
did
guess
Super
that also would
Nintendo
have
come
included
out?
Super Mario Brothers. Super Nintendo is next, which was also $199, and that came out on August 13th, 1991.
So they were still kind of expensive even back then.
Right. I mean, when you figure inflation, it's probably about maybe $299 at this point.
Mhm.
So Super Nintendo and N64 and the GameCube all released for $199. In 1996, when the N64 came out, 2001 is when we had the GameCube. The came out in 2006 for $249. It came with Wii Sports, which that was fun back in the day. The Wii U, that flop, as much as I love my Wii U, rest in peace, was $349.
Hmm.
The only really expensive console launch was the infamous PlayStation 3, which
Yes.
dropped for $599. The
That
PlayStation 3.
beast. That
Yeah.
beast. Ah, but it was
For
backwards
a 60
compatible.
gigabyte model. Yeah, and it was backwards compatible, so you could that was like the big thing back then, right?
Oh,
That you could
yeah.
play your PlayStation 2 games.
And to me, that was worth it. Like, it's a shame that backwards compatibility is kind of like non-existent for, the generations after that. Because it's like, oh, well, not gonna say that there's not like good new games, but I still like to play my old games, and it sucks that I can't, that I have to buy them all over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a hankering to play Chrono Cross over the summer, um, but it didn't work. My Chrono Cross disc doesn't work on my PlayStation 2 anymore.
Oh no.
Um, and I could just probably emulate it if I wanted to, um, but it's not the same, I guess. But I don't know. I really wanted to pop it in, play it, have the Corda controller and the memory card and all that stuff. But yeah, it just didn't really work. But yeah, console launches. Do y'all have any fond memories of consoles, like your first console, or when you bought one? Were you excited? The first one that you might have bought with your own money. Um, what's that like for you?
The first console I ever had. Does the Game Boy Color count? Are we counting?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Because my 6-year-old self would be very disappointed if we didn't. Almost to the point of tears. I had a hot pink Game Boy Color. I really, really wanted that like bright lime green one, but I don't think that
Yeah.
they had it. Or maybe I wanted both of them. I don't really remember, but it was pink. And I remember being on like in the car, in the back of the car, because it didn't have a screen light, as I play Pokemon almost exclusively. Just like waiting on the highway until we went under like a street light to try to play like 3 seconds of Pokemon, and then wait another 5 to 10 seconds, and then play another 3 seconds of Pokemon on nighttime car trips. That was just amazing. Like having old school Pokemon, just like as soon as it hit the market, was so thrilling. I don't think I've ever replicated that kind of rush. in my adult life.
No, I feel that. Quick question though. Who's your starter Pokemon?
It's always the fire one, Kyle. There is a right answer. And
Always
it's
the
always
fire one. Goodness.
Wait, what about you,
Thank you for
Kyle?
tuning in the one and only episode of STV. We're canceled now because apparently
Are
there is a
you a
bias
water type person, Kyle?
I wonder. Duh. Yes.
Wow.
Squirtle and
Okay.
Twi'lek
Wow.
all day.
We got 2 water types here. You're
Squirtle?
Hey.
There's a fire-breathing dragon and you choose a turtle? I can find one of those in my
Yes.
backyard.
Exactly.
It's not Teenage Mutant Ninja. It is simply Turtle.
That's wild.
All
I have a
you know what? You
dragon.
can say it.
To be honest, though, I don't feel strongly about any particular, like, for first gen, I don't feel strongly towards any particular starter. I don't even know. Like, I'm sure I chose one. I just have no idea which one it was. So, like, I don't know. Like, I think I would have preferred to choose Pikachu. And that's why I used to play Pokemon Yellow all the time, because I could have Pikachu
Right.
around.
I think the real answer here is Pikachu.
Yes.
I think we can all agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Y'all are Pikachu
Okay.
simps.
Happily.
You ain't never lied. Anairis, what about you? Console fun times.
Oh gosh. I don't know what my first console was, because my uncle was a gamer and I had a lot of hand-me-down games and consoles from him. The earliest memory I have of playing a console was a Super Nintendo. I used to play that Aladdin game on there all the time. It was so much fun. But then I think the next console I remember getting new though was Nintendo DS. And I freaking loved the Nintendo DS and like every iteration of the DS afterwards, because I just loved the fact that it was portable and I didn't have
Such
to
a great
angle
system.
it to look at it
Mhm.
like the old Game
Yep.
Boys. Like
Mhm.
I could just play it, and it was so cool. And I think, oh gosh, I don't even remember the first games I got for that, but I know one of the first games I got for it was Animal Crossing, and I loved Animal Crossing.
Oh,
Yeah, and
Ooh.
for
which
some reason,
one was that on DS? Do you remember? I forget which one that
Wild
was.
World, I want to say something
I
like that.
think so. Let me look it up. Go
Um,
ahead.
Those are the ones with where you had that mole that was like, oh, you didn't save your game. Why'd you close it like that?
Rossetti.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rossetti. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, he was so
Yeah, I think it
mean.
is Wild World. I have that one too.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I think that's like the only Animal Crossing game I vibe with. Not that I don't like the new Animal Crossing game, but like I don't know. I just kind of prefer Wild World more.
hmm
So I've had a hard time like sitting down for this Animal Crossing game that's out now on Switch, because it's like I mean it is nice, but oh man, I could play Hollow Knight right now, instead.
Right.
But yeah, Nintendo DS was like the last one I remember, and most likely the PlayStation 5 will be the first one I actually buy with my own money. So it's gonna be fun.
Oh, dang.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like with Animal Crossing, and I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for this, but I feel like if you've played one, you've played them all.
Yeah.
And that's not a disrespect to the Animal Crossing games, because I really loved my time with Wild World. I played the mess out that game. But it's also one of those things where I totally respect Animal Crossing, and I'm really glad New Horizons is so successful. And especially this year with just the pandemic and the timing of that, and seeing
Mhm.
Animal Crossing penetrate mainstream media, that was dope. And I'm really happy for that. I'm really happy for the people who are playing it. I know a couple of friends who got into gaming because of Animal Crossing. So I'm here for it. I just also feel like I'd rather play Stardew Valley, because I'm already 100 hours into my farm, and I need to do more with my farm, though, because I have not played in a while. But I don't know. We'll see about that, because wintertime is perfect time for some farming, at least virtually. For me, it was the Christmas morning of 1992. I was very much into Christmas when I was a kid, which was interesting because, I grew up working class in a single parent home for the most part. So the fact that my mom and my dad, when he was around, were able to just ascertain all the gifts on the list for me and my sister was so remarkable. I don't know how they did it, but I am eternally grateful for that morning in 92 when I had my Super Nintendo and a brand new TV waiting for us downstairs in the dining room, living room kind of area, and it was Super Nintendo with Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Mario Kart, and Super Mario World. And those were my first video games, and I fell in love with every single one of them and could not stop playing. And I don't remember ever really wanting it at first, but I remember that Christmas morning very vividly. And I mean, I love Zelda. I'm wearing a Zelda shirt right now. I have a Zelda tattoo, and that changed my life. And A Link to the Past was so interesting for me because I just love the story. I love going on an adventure to save this princess and going to this dark world. And I don't know, it tripped me up, and I started writing my own stories after that. Um,
Mm.
and I would also make my own instruction booklets and player's guides and stuff like that too, and build and design levels. I really think I miss my calling as a game developer, but there's still time. I'm still
There is.
alive, but yeah, and I also remember I kind of repeated the experience with my Switch, because I just woke up Christmas Eve morning about a year or two ago, and I had some freelance money hit my account that morning. I was like, all right, bet. I'm gonna go get a Switch. So I got on my bike and trucked down to GameStop and picked up a Nintendo Switch and like bought Smash Brothers Ultimate and Mario Kart 8, and I love it. And I just love video games. I love the feeling of getting a new console, but I'm not feeling particularly great about this generation.
Hmm.
How are we feeling about PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and I guess the next generation in general?
Um, I, cause what? I haven't really been paying too much attention to like gaming news lately, but PlayStation 5 came out just the other day, right?
Last Wednesday, as of
Hmm.
this recorded.
So, um, yeah, I don't feel particularly excited. And I think it's just because I know how this usually goes, you know? You have the new consoles and you have games for the new consoles, but then, the games are still going to come out for the previous consoles, so it's not really a
Hmm.
huge big deal to get right now. And yeah, I mean, it feels a little still too soon, I guess, to have a new console. But it is at least nice to see the new graphics and the new video games, like the Miles Morales game. Like that's really cool to see.
Right,
I think
right.
that's the only exciting thing about new gen. Like the next generation of games that we get, but not necessarily the consoles.
Yeah, I'm feeling
Hmm.
almost
Hmm.
aggressively neutral about this. I think they just kind of even out in their pros and cons. I'm used to Xboxes. I've never really played on a PS4 or any of the previous PlayStation systems. So I'd be willing to switch over. It'd just be annoying to have to relearn a controller. But at this point, like as someone who, as I mentioned, like doesn't have a console right now, I'm just kind of waiting to see what goes on because as we've seen with games over the last couple of years, and into the last decade and more, just the habit of things being released but not fully working is something that I've now
Yeah.
just grown to anticipate. So I want to see before I buy anything, what are the issues that users are experiencing at what rates, and which console essentially either experiences the fewest number of issues or patches them and eventually becomes the superior version of that console.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to think about because I, I'm glad I'm in a mixed bag with this because I think I like the fact that we can go back to video games and update them and change them and have these patches and improve them and have DLC. I think when that first started in the PlayStation 3, 360 era, um, people turn their noses at it a lot. And we've kind of just gotten used to it, which I guess is fine. But when something like Final Fantasy 15 happens and the mess that was for so long, and the fact that we
Oh
waited
yeah.
like what 10 years almost for that game to come out, and then it comes out and it's not done still. And I think I mean it still sold well, it still performed well. I haven't played it yet, and I probably won't play it because I wanted to wait until it was done, and by that time my interest in it had waned. So I'm like, cool. I'm glad that I'm getting new Smash Brothers characters. That's dope, and we're getting patches where we nerf and buff the characters and make it more balanced. But at the same time, that game came out and it was done,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just reiterated on it. Um, I don't know. I think it's weird because that in itself makes me also like Mina just resistant to buy it out the gate. Um,
Yeah.
I'm excited about it as just a gamer. Just like, hey, we got this new thing. There's gonna be new possibilities and new opportunities and new games that are gonna be coming out that are dope that we want to check out. But it's gonna be a while because we have what, one launch title for the PlayStation 5, really, and it's Spider-Man, but I can play that on my PS4 now and it works fine on a base PS4.
Yeah.
And then Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I'm not an Assassin's Creed person, nor am I a Vikings person, and that's on Xbox 360 as well, or not 360, on Series X. Xbox needs to fix their name system. And, it's just like, well, if I could play these things anywhere, probably a lot of them are going to be on PC, because
Mhm.
even with a lot of the PlayStation 4 games, a lot of those came out in such a way that you could play them on your computer. You could play them on your PC. And that to me really made me feel like, is this going to be the last generation of consoles outside of Nintendo? Nintendo's always going to do their own thing. But, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point to make because, I think people are becoming more increasingly aware that, PC is like a nice neutral ground and you can play anything on there, right? You can play, the latest AAA game, but you can also play, indie games. And I think indie games have been very much on the rise, and Nintendo especially has been taking advantage of like porting them and showing them to, console only players. Uh, and I don't particularly imagine, Nintendo ever dying out in gaming. Like, I think it's always going to be pretty good, especially because they were the ones who introduced having portable games in the first place. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and having, the balance with the Nintendo Switch, like that was like really innovative and really cool. So, um, yeah. But in terms of PlayStation and Xbox, I'm not sure if Microsoft or Sony could do anything to really keep people from going to PC other than like people just being too lazy to build a PC, I guess. But yeah, even me now, I'm not particularly excited about either. Like I would rather get a PlayStation just cuz PlayStation's just always been my number one, but at the same time like there's no drawing and like I don't know. I just don't particularly care. Like my PS4 works fine. It has no issues whatsoever. So like why would I get this, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree that this makes PC gaming seem significantly more appealing. I have a Mac computer, so I like legitimately can't do anything at all. I can play Among Us on my phone, and that's it. So I'm pretty limited at the moment. But even this is making me think like, okay, like PC seems like the best option. I'm gonna get the new games. I'm gonna get the old games. I'm not gonna have to worry about like backwards compatibility in the same way. I'm not gonna have to worry every 5 years. Do I have to get a new computer? I might have to make some upgrades, but not in the same way where I get a new system that is also enormous. And I don't know where they think people are going to store this Xbox because it's basically the size of a subwoofer.
Mm.
And like Xbox Ones or 360s, if you're still on a 360, no shame. They're very small. So if you have them in like your television display, like where are you going to put this giant brick? It's not even a brick, it's a cinder block. So it's just pushing me more towards PC gaming because I'm just like, yeah, like buying or building a PC is going to be an investment, but there's so much else that I can do with that as well.
And I'm also thinking lately, because I think having a PlayStation 4 is like the most conscious I've been of like what it's like to have a console. Because I don't think I really thought about it back when I was younger. Uh, I constantly have to replace my controller, and it is ridiculous that I have to pay $70 just to replace a controller. Um,
So much.
yeah, it's so much, and then I have to pay for games, and games are getting more expensive every year. So like, I don't. I don't particularly feel like buying into the whole capitalist nature of it. I just don't care for it. at all. And like at least with PC, it's like, I have my keyboard and my keyboard is pretty reliable. And I can also, attach a controller, plug in a controller and that works too. And that wouldn't be as expensive uh to replace at all, So I don't know. I just think things are just getting too expensive. And in a world where, it is just so hard to just survive, uh I don't think it's very feasible.
Yeah, I feel like, something that the three of us have talked about before is microtransactions in gaming. And as much as I personally don't like them and do not approve of them, and I think in some ways they can be psychologically dangerous for young children, I'm not necessarily surprised because at the forefront, a lot of what gaming is microtransactions. Buy the console, buy the accessories, then buy the game or games because you don't want to just spend, a couple $100 playing one game. So it just necessitates additional investment and they also aren't built to last. So if I'm, spending like, $600 or $700 on a console every decade, assuming that two come out per decade, like that's kind of insane. That's, if you're essentially getting a new computer, in addition to whatever like actual computer you might have to replace every like 15 years or so when you add up the price, like that's absurd.
Yeah, and I think especially for me, I haven't been gaming for, almost 30 years in my life at this point. Um, when you had the Super Nintendo, when you had the GameCube, when you had uh, the original Xbox or PlayStation 2, it was just a different ecosystem. I mean, in order to play video games, you had to have a console. You had to have those things, and now it's different because when I was at my brokest a few years ago, I played all my games on a hand-me-down PS3 and my computer. And my computer wasn't that great, but it was also an opportunity for me to discover a lot of indie games that weren't so prevalent on consoles at the time. That wave was sort of starting. It started on PC, then made its way to consoles, and I discovered so much. And I wonder if at this point, video games are such an expensive hobby, and it can be very inaccessible. And I think that's one of the big problems when friends of mine ask me, "Hey, Kyle, I want to get into video games," and I tell them, "Oh, okay, well, what's your budget?" Because video games are ridiculously expensive, and you're better off just taking your phone or your computer and finding something. And if you don't have a strong computer, just jump on itch.io or whatever and find something there. And trying to curate that experience is going to be a lot more difficult because, again, accessibility in video games is just not very good. I don't know. Thinking about those indie games though that I played in those years, I found so much, and games that really spoke to me in ways that I don't think video games could ever speak to me, which is what I want to get into with this episode. Now that we're 30 minutes in, I think one of the things that are on my Christmas wish list for this next generation is what are we going to do about diversity and inclusivity? And to kind of, preface this a little bit, I really want to think about, briefly what the landscape of game development is when we think about what video games are as far as representation. And I don't really think that it's as diverse on the inside as it is on the outside, which in itself is not necessarily a problem, but it does present problems because the history of video games is just so white. Like cishet white dudes playing video games or making them, which whatever, that's fine. But at the same time, I only ever saw myself represented in like fighting games, and that was it until the last 5-10 years. What do y'all feel like games have done for you when it comes to your identity, though? Like, what was the first game that you felt like, hey, I can relate to this?
The first game? That's weird. I can't really think about one. I think the very first game I remember having, like seeing a black female protagonist was when I was playing Assassin's Creed. And one of the games had the protagonist, I think her name was Aveline, I forget which one it was. Uh, and I saw her and I'm like, yes, because like I'm seeing essentially myself. And I got excited. But then I played the game and I didn't like it. and I couldn't figure out why I didn't like it, and I felt bad for not liking it because, like I'm seeing myself in a video game. I should be more excited about this. I should be more inherently supportive, or I felt like I should have been, but I couldn't because I just like it was a story that I couldn't relate to, and I think it was written from the perspective of people who didn't actually understand what it was to be Black and what it meant to have a Black female protagonist, I think. Um, and that happened with another game, Remember Me, uh, which, a lot of people, I think there's like mixed views on it. For me, I didn't like it. And it was another case where I felt bad because, like, oh, again, I'm seeing myself. Why aren't I more excited here? And I think that happens very often whenever we're seeing stories of POC. Uh, it's not very fulfilling, and in turn, it doesn't get a lot of support. But then, not getting support means that you're not going to see more of it. So it's just this catch-22, and it's kind of frustrating, honestly.
Yeah, I've never really felt like visually I've been represented in a way that I found satisfactory. I know there are East Asian characters in fighting games like Mortal Kombat and other games, but I've often found them somewhat distasteful and not representative of my personal um, like background. So I I'm not sure if I can accurately say like, oh, I heavily projected out this person or I like saw myself in them. Um, I've seen characters and like races of characters in games treated very similarly to like how minorities, like East Asian people, are treated in like American society. But I don't think there's like one character I could pull out of a hat. Like, yeah, that's when I like saw myself in a video game. Do you have like a one character person?
Do I have someone?
Yeah, like one specific character that you like that's representing the type of person I am. I see myself in this person.
I don't think I do. I think I've had to sort of I don't want to say force myself to relate to them in such a way. I think there are characters with which I've really felt I've emotionally empathized with them, but I think to a certain extent, none of these characters, I think the ones that I do attach myself to are essentially racially ambiguous, which I feel like happens with a lot of games that come from Japan for the most part, though they're still, fair skinned, quote unquote. So there's not that. And then it almost feels like I get apprehensive whenever I see initially a Black character. For instance, I think one of the very first characters in a narrative story based game for me was playing the original Final Fantasy VII. And I remember Barrett being very brash, and his dialect was just very stereotypically Black. Which it's by Japanese game developers in the 90s. I really don't expect them to be spot on culturally, considering they're a homogenous society, but that's really making excuses. When you are Squaresoft, you have all the money in the world, even though they blunder it on really bad projects. In the remake, I found Barrett to be endearing, even though he still had sort of that kind of brash, surly personality to him. I don't know. There was something about that I think was nice to see. But it's still, I feel like a lot of the Black characters that are in video games are mercenaries or military people, or they're in fighting games, so they don't really have much personality. Um, so that's a problem for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
th- I think there's a game that's on the horizon that I really want. I really hope we can get them on the show at some point. Um, that's called She Dreams Elsewhere. And it's about this queer Black woman who essentially is trying to survive as an introvert socially while
Hmm.
also doing some dungeon crawling in her dreams. Um, it's really dope, and it's giving me those Persona vibes, like a Persona cross Undertale thing, but through the eyes of a Black woman, and I think that's really dope. I played the demo. The demo's out now. It's free. You can check it out on Steam. Um, I'm really excited about that because that to me made me think about if I were to develop games, which I would love to do at some point in my life, I would love to tell that kind of story. And like, I really want to see, you know, more characters of color in such a way that it's telling the story from their perspective truly, in the way that something in film like Get Out or Us with Jordan Peele, um, takes that genre and turns it in such a way that it's like, hey, this is what the Black experience is like through something like this, using these tropes to redefine, or not even redefine, but to actually define and explore what the Black experience would be in those situations, because normally that's not the lens that we're looking through and stuff like that.
That's interesting.
That's what I want from this next generation, but I don't know if we're going to get that.
Yeah. For the past generation, in terms of game developers, and I feel like the indie game developers are able to provide, more diverse perspectives in the AAA scene. I remember when there was that Uncharted game, the last Uncharted game that came out.
Lost Legacy.
Yes. And I remember how uncomfortable a lot of people were with Laura Bailey, like beloved Laura Bailey, because she's amazing, playing a African woman. And from my perspective as a voice actress, it's very weird that I guess AAA game developers are comfortable, having a white woman play a POC character, but then you won't see the opposite. And I think that's like my concern. If there's enough diversity in the voiceover perspective, I think that's something that's kind of lacking in video games. I think it's something like, people are trying to be more aware of, but I think in terms of like bridging the gap of everyone playing everyone, which is what we want ultimately in voiceover, you just don't see so much of that. And I think that's very interesting.
I feel like this is very similar to the question of should gay people on television or in movies be portrayed by real queer people, but in a slightly different way. So I think that can be very confusing, because on one hand, like with gay people, like that can cause people to out themselves in order to get a role, and that's very clearly not like quite the same thing when it comes to race. But Anairis, correct me if I'm wrong? I've heard that like there are occasions where like voice actors don't know the race of the character that they're playing. Is that correct? And I don't know if that's the case in this particular situation. I just mean like in general.
That happens a lot, especially with prelay, because things are still in pre-production, or rather things are entering production, and designs can change. So maybe initially they designed a character to be Black, and then later on they decide to make it white, or vice versa. And sometimes in prelay you will have it so that say they cast someone for a character and they don't particularly have a race in mind or a design in mind for the character, but then the race of the character changes once they cast the person, depending on what the race of that person is. But usually with prelay, we don't see anything in terms of concept. It's kind of rare, but you hope that you do, and I think sometimes you end up doing it as you in production. Like you end up learning or seeing art of the production. It depends, because for me personally, I haven't had that experience yet, especially with video games. But yeah, it does happen, and every time it happens, either voice actors say something or they don't. I know some white voice actors, like once they learn that the character is Black, they'll either or a different culture than them, they will either step down from the role or ask to be recast, particularly pointing towards POC or LGBTQ actors, or they will just ask not to be credited. But yeah, I'm not sure what exactly happened with Uncharted. I think at the time that wasn't really a conversation we were having, though. I think my main concern is that, there's comfort having Black people or POC people, play themselves in these big roles, right? And that's okay. But you won't necessarily see a Black person playing a lead white role in a video game. Like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that like with the additional layer of not knowing much about character design, it can make things more complicated because actors can get themselves into situations that they didn't realize were going to end up that way. But at the same time, like 1,000%, when Anairis said like it doesn't really work the opposite way for characters of color, especially like Black voice actresses and actors and voice people. Like you're not going to see it in the reverse. So why are we focused so heavily on one side of the problem?
Yeah.
I don't know much about real pre-production in film or TV or video games for that matter, but I imagine there has to be some conversations that happens before you hire your actors what these characters are going to identify as, or is that an insensitivity that just kind of comes as they assume that every character they default as white when they're developing these games or storyboarding them or what have you. But I imagine with something like Uncharted, you kind of have to know that Nadine is going to be this Black character, especially when it comes to doing the mocap and all that other stuff. You know that this person is going to look a certain way. They've already done the artwork and things like that. So I wonder how much of that is just, lazy on the part of the developers. But I don't really know that we can know. Maybe that's something we can kind of do in the show later, is find some developers or producers or someone who would have some sort of insight of how that works and how to push against it. I want to run through some quick numbers as far as how the game industry looks, at least within recent years. I'm just going to run through these real quick. This is from an article via Game Designing titled, "Is There a Lack of Diversity in Video Games?" The article did not come with a byline, so I don't know who wrote this, but they put up some numbers that kind of reveals just what the industry looks like as far as sexuality, culture, race, things like that. And in these numbers are from the International Game Developers Association in a survey that was done in 2017. They looked at the gender numbers, which 74% of the respondents were male, 21% of the respondents were female, 2% of the respondents were male to female transgender, and less than 1% of the respondents were female to male transgender, and 2% of the respondents were other. And let's see, as far as the race ethnicity numbers, 68% of respondents identified as white or Caucasian or European. And then we go down to 18% as East or Southeast Asian, 5% Hispanic or Latino, 3% Pacific Islanders, 2% Arabian or West Asian, 2% Aboriginal or Indigenous, and 1% identified as Black or African American. Also, for funsies, 81% of respondents identified as heterosexual, 5% identified as homosexual, 11% bisexual, and 3% identified as other. Those are some super low numbers when it comes to diversity within race and sexuality. I can't get over that only 1% of developers identified as Black, and 81% were heterosexual.
And I think that's why you have issues not only in like casting, but also in just the stories that we are seeing in video games, and the lack of diversity we see with characters in general, because you're just not having that diversity in staff. I think if you have more people behind the scenes holding each other accountable and having different perspectives as well, then that will lead to a more informed product, a more informed story, more informed characters, and you won't have issues like Uncharted or Final Fantasy VII, where you're having a very stereotypical Black male character. So I think, I'm actually a little surprised, because I would have thought that by now those numbers would have changed, but I guess not.
Yeah, I would love to see if maybe go back and see what it was like in 2010, and then also see what it looked like in maybe 2019 or 2020. Mina, do you have any thoughts on these numeros?
I mean, honestly, is anyone really surprised that they're so low? Frankly, some of these numbers are higher than I thought they would be. And these are American numbers, right? These are, worldwide.
It's from the
Oh,
International Game
wow.
Developers Association.
Oh, I missed. Oh, no, that hurts. That one hurt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
this isn't just America.
um,
This is all over the planet.
okay, well, still not that surprised, frankly. We know we need diversity in games, and that, too often people of color, queer people, other marginalized identities, and the people who identify such just do not have the publicity and that seat that they need and that we need. So I'm really not surprised because this just, it just kind of essentially mirrors how society already exists. Does life imitate art or does art imitate life is, I think, the question here. And I think, the answer being a little bit of both. So disappointed, obviously, but not surprised. How about you, Kyle?
I'm not surprised. I feel like that those numbers reflect every industry. Every entertainment industry looks like this. And I don't know how much of that really reflects the census, especially in America, but that's not an excuse either, especially because I know there are talented game developers out there that are of color, could really be making big waves in the industry. And I really, really hope that, I think there are some organizations that are, doing the grassroots effort of just teaching kids of color, especially, how to code, how to program, how to develop games and things like that. And that's dope. And I think in the future, in 5-10 years, we could see significant change in those numbers, especially with just an even playing field as far as just being able to make your own games and release them. That's still very much a new thing to be an indie developer. Me growing up, I had an RPG Maker back in the day, but you couldn't publish the games. So I made games, but couldn't do anything with them. So that was prohibitive too. And man, it costs so much money to make a damn video game.
yeah. And I think that becomes this accessibility thing as well for POC.
Yeah.
Like it's a visibility and accessibility thing because, like, again, my perspective as a voice actor, like I didn't get into voice acting because I did not see voice actors of color. Like at least in the industries I wanted to be in, even the ones I did see in other industries or in other mediums rather, it was just a handful, like, 3 people, like Cree Summer, Philomar, maybe a couple other people, and that was it. So it's like, it's both, I think, for any creative industry.
Pop quiz. How many black and brown video game characters can you name off the top of your head? No Googling allowed, because if you cheat in Google, a kitten will lose its wings. And I don't think you want to live with those consequences.
So I'm directly responsible for all the wingless kittens. That's a lot to carry with me.
Yes, you are. That's how the world works, Mina.
Am I allowed to swear?
Whenever you cheat on a test, a kitten loses its wings.
I think ultimately maybe less than 100. Or maybe less than 200.
100 kittens or 100 black and brown people?
Black and brown, probably less than 100. Or less than 150. Here, my final answer, less than 150.
Okay, but how many can you name?
Can I name? Shoot. Okay. Nessa, Raihan, Leon. I'm doing Pokemon. Iris. There's some other ones in there, but I don't know the names. Nadine. Barrett. Shoot. Aveline. And that's just because we were just talking about them. There's some characters in Iconoclast. I don't remember their names. But them.
Mina, actually.
Mina. Yes,
What?
Mina.
Perfect.
There's a brown character in Iconoclast named Mina, and she is LGBTQ as
Hell
well,
yeah.
so it's pretty cool.
No, you got to play that game, Mina. It's so good. I'm almost done, finally. I'm like on the last bit of
I
it.
gotta ask you
It's
your
so good.
thoughts later.
Yeah.
'cause it's really good.
Yeah, we need to have Yeah, I know that game is old, but I would love to do like a spoiler cast of that episode or that video game. That'd be
Yes.
dope.
Shoot, if we
Yeah.
can get the developer on here, that would be great too. Because actually, what I was thinking, I'm thinking about like the Pokemon company Game Freak and Konjac as well, where these are both developers of different different like callings, but they're both developers who they added diversity and they didn't make a big deal about it. It was just there, and I love
Right.
that. I feel like that should be more the norm, where you just throw in some diversity, and you're not like making this whole performative thing, marketing thing on Twitter or social media. You're just like, hey, we have a black gym leader and a totally diverse LGBTQ cast in a cast of characters in a game, and that's it.
Yep. That's how to do it.
And it's not about about them being POC or LGBTQ. That's my favorite thing.
Right, because I can go on all day about that, but I don't want to right now. Mina, who can you name?
Okay. Duncan. These are from Dragon Age.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take it. I'm just gonna say that because Anairis said Aveline, and I think Aveline is the name of characters in multiple franchises, including Dragon Age. But in Dragon Age, she's very, very white. So I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about. In Dragon Age, there's Grand Enchanter Fiona, Alistair Theron, Duncan. What's his last name? Duncan, the guy. He's the Grey Warden. There is. Are we talking just about like legitimately like people of color, or people who are like coding as POC?
They can.
Let's just go.
Because I mean, not every video game talks about race exactly, so they wouldn't be able to declare them one way or another.
That's a fair point. What other games have I played? Oh, Anderson from Mass Effect.
Okay.
Florence from Florence.
Right.
What else have I played?
I forgot about Florence.
I have the memory of a drunken goldfish.
We're just exposing ourselves for having bad memory.
Or maybe there just aren't enough people. The scarcity.
No, I think it's 100% that, because I can name like all of the characters from Dragon Age, but the number of people who are of color, Zevran is another one. But yeah, the number of characters of color, especially black and brown characters, very small compared.
And the ones that we can like remember because they were interesting characters, I think that's another thing. Like if you were to ask me, like the ones I can think of that I find like very interesting, like a lot of them would be in Pokemon and Iconoclast, and then after that it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of interesting.
It gets
ones.
fuzzy after that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, what about you?
So I composed the list. I cheated.
So you're the reason all these kittens are wearing last
as
night,
the moderator, I had to come prepared.
Oh wow!
That's
insane.
But I make the rules here. I'm the final
I thought
boss.
this was a democracy.
Oh, you thought wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what 2020 told me.
Yep. Oh, oof, my heart. So we've got a few from Street Fighter. We got Balrog. We got DJ, Elena, Dalsim, and Vega. I guess they count. We've got Shiva from Resident Evil 5. Question: does Ganondorf count?
That was going to be my question.
He do have black vibes.
He really does. And he is so evil, and I don't know how I feel about that. Do I want to claim him? Because, boy, he fucks up the whole world every 100 years, and he needs to chill.
I mean,
little social unrest never hurt anybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be better if we had, like, more, I guess, good black characters or good POC characters, but,
that'd be nice.
Take what we can get.
Yeah. Continuing down the list, also in Zelda, I'm claiming Urbosa and all the Gerudos.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh yeah, they're also LGBTQ. Just canon.
Exactly.
I'm claiming them for the gays.
Yep. We got CJ from San Andreas. Of course, everybody knows CJ. There's a black character in the Metroid series, Anthony Higgs. I just looked this up. I think he's in the other M. I'm not sure. I got to double check to confirm that. But again, minor character, probably overlooked it. If you played all the Metroid games, probably didn't even realize it. Probably has 2 lines. The whole Def Jam for Vendetta's roster, which doesn't count because they're all rappers. We've mentioned Barrett. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Saza from Final Fantasy 15. Or not 15, 13. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, Saz.
Thank you. I could never pronounce that dude's name.
Yeah. And they made his music all jazzy too.
Yeah, exactly. He had the chocobo in his fro. I really into that.
What a little boy. Aw, bless.
Yep. Alex Vance from Half-Life. More fighting game characters, including Jade, Tanya, and Jax from Mortal Kombat. Doc Lewis from Punch-Out, and boy, is that a caricature. A whole bunch of Tekken characters. I'm not going to go down that list. I would like to claim Jade from Beyond Good and Evil.
Oh, that sounds so familiar.
There's supposed to be a Beyond...
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yes.
Where she's a photographer and she's going off on that adventure and everything.
Right.
So there's that. We have Riley, Sam, and Henry in The Last of Us. We have Dandara from Dandara. I'd like to claim Shantae. And then I found a bunch of other indie games and things like that too. I don't know if anyone has played Sunset, but the main character is Black Woman Nealon from Remember Me. It's from Don't Nod, which I have problems with that studio because I feel like they're definitely ones who pander for diversity with the Life is Strange games, especially. I don't know if anybody played their new game this year. I don't know if it came out. Tell Me Why, which features a trans character as the main character.
Yes. Remember they were very performative in that marketing too.
Not a good look.
They really have some issues there. Skate from Streets of Rage, Dominic from Gears of War, Isabella from Dead Rising, Rico from Just Cause, Julia Chang, a Native American from Tekken, and Vulcan Raven from Metal Gear Solid. And those are the only 2 Native American characters I could think of off the top of my head.
Connor.
And I did some research, and yeah, I'll say we got Connor. But a lot of the other characters, they're caricatures and they're minor, and no one is prominent. And if you want to talk about a community or a group that is very underrepresented in video games, it's definitely Native Americans, indigenous people. And we have the whole cast of 1979 Revolution, Black Friday, which looks at the Iranian Revolution from 1979. That is my as thorough as possible list I could come up with in about 10, 20 minutes.
You had more time than us.
Well, yeah.
I thought of 2 more. Does that count? Can I add that to my total?
Yeah.
Josephine Montillier in Dragon Age Inquisition.
Okay.
Ooh.
Voiced by Allegra Clark. And shit. Wait, Dorian Parvis.
Oh yeah.
In Dragon Age Inquisition. And
Who are behind the Dragon Age games? What studio is that?
BioWare.
Yeah. They've always I think they're like the only big studio that's pretty conscious of having diversity in that sense.
James Vega from, I think that's Mass Effect 2, is a person of color.
I think so.
And Vivienne from Dragon Age Inquisition. They actually have a lot. Now that I'm going back and using my brain power, they do pretty decent.
I was thinking,
good job
when
Dragon
we were
Age.
talking,
Get your writing together.
when Kyla, when you mentioned The Last of Us, I was thinking like, oh yeah, Riley, Sam, all those black characters that died. Spoilers, but also they died.
They all died. Yeah, and the same thing happens in The Last of Us too. The black characters that if you see a black character, don't get attached to them because they're gonna die.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's a mess. I'm actually working on an essay about that right now. We need more representation for sure. We're a long ways away, I feel like, from that actually happening. I hope it happens. I want to see it happen. It needs to happen. But the fact that we don't have a character that we can really relate to is the real issue.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have to do our research ahead of a show, and before we can list just, characters of color in a video game is, I don't know. It sucks. And I hope we can do better as an industry, but we'll see how this generation goes. I don't know. Do you all feel like there's hope in that? Do you see change happening?
Yeah, I think I have high hopes. I think this year has forced everyone in every industry to sit down and listen. And whether or not, the change that occurs from this year is permanent or not, that's only time can tell. But I hope that, more POC, not just gamers, but also, developers and, everyone in the industry. I wish that more POC creators and gamers and such would hold developers accountable. And encourage the kind of diversity that we should be seeing. Yeah, I feel hopeful, and I think there's definitely a new wave of confidence to pursue diversity for sure.
Oh, okay. I hope so. I'm not like sure how much factual basis I have in order to sustain that hope, but I think there are a lot of games that are doing it right. Like Monster Prom we talked about earlier, Dream Daddies being another dating sim that had a lot of diversity in a lot of different ways, including racial. Obviously Dragon Age, which I've talked about before. So I think there are a lot of like shining examples of what is doing well. Florence, another great game that was diverse. And I think there's a lot more in indie development. A lot of indie gamers and indie game devs have very, very diverse casts, and that demand is more easily met in the indie community, I think, because like AAA games are not meant for are often not so focused on diversity as they should be. So I think when it comes to the indie space, there's more hope there.
I just realized I remembered who I can relate to in video games.
Do tell.
Theo in Celeste.
Oh, I need to play that.
Yeah, play that game. That game is great. I love the game so much. I love Theo. That is my homie. I'd want to hang out with him. And when you play it, check it out on Instagram because he has his own Instagram, like as the characters, and it's
cool.
really just it's so sweet, and charming, and funny. And like he and the main character, they're like best friends. They hang out. It's one of the best things on the internet. I just love it. Check it out if you can. But yeah, I love how that game also is very diverse. I know recently they just talked about how the main character came out as trans, which is really dope because there's a hint of that at the end of the game, but it was just confirmed last week that it is in fact Madeline is trans.
Oh, she's the main character, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Madeline is the main character. Yep. So there's that. We have a main character who was a trans character in what got so many 10 out of 10s last year when it came out. I adore that game so much. It's definitely top 5 for me. So yeah, before we wrap up, what have we been playing?
I have been really I was like waiting for you to go, Mina.
Because I figured you'd have more experience.
We were both waiting for each other. Okay. Phasmophobia. I have been playing that like crazy. Like it is a problem. I don't usually play PC games or co-op games at all. I never play multiplayer games. And the reason why I don't play multiplayer games is because I have so much anxiety playing games with other people. Like I feel like I don't know. I just like having the experience to myself, and I feel like I'm getting judged if I play with other people. So I don't usually play multiplayer games. But Among Us was like such a fantastic introduction to multiplayer games to me, and I realized how fun it is to play with other people. And then with it having been about to be Halloween, I started playing Phasmophobia, and now I'm starting to fall in love a little bit with the horror genre of video games. And I really like it. I really, really like it. And especially because like with Phasmophobia, you don't necessarily need like 10 people. Like you need Among Us, or you need an Among Us. You could just have 2 people and you're gonna have a good spooky time. And I love that.
A good spooky time. I like that. Mm-hmm. Mina, what you got going on?
I've got Among Us, but more importantly, I've got the Among Us memes.
Ooh, yes.
That's actually what got me into Among Us. It wasn't either of you being like, we should play Among Us. And I was like, yeah, okay. But then I saw the memes and I was like, I have to play this game.
Wait, have you played a game yet?
I have played several games. And I've only gotten imposter like twice, and I've done a terrible, terrible job. But if I was assigned to be an imposter more, maybe I'd be better at it.
Mm-hmm. Got to practice your lying skills.
Oh, apparently bad. Also because I never remember where I am or what the rooms are called. So they're like, where were you? And I'm like, I was like in a room. I was certainly at a location doing a task.
That sucks.
Yes. I am the driver of the sus bus. What about you, Cal? What have you been up to these days?
So I have a problem. I have been buying games and then I'll play them and then I won't commit or finish any of them. And
Same.
it's weird because I'll get so close to the end and then I'll just stop. I did it with After Party. I could probably play and finish that game in like an hour's time, and then I just all of a sudden dropped it and just stopped playing. And it's weird because I loved my time with it, but I just dropped it. I picked up Majora's Mask 3D on 3DS and got 2 temples in and said, okay, I guess I'm done. And then I did the same thing with Control. I did the same thing with I'm trying not to do it with Iconoclast. I'm like, I gotta finish this game. I did it with Panzer Paladin. Got to the last world and just stopped playing. I don't know what's happening to me. I have a problem with just finishing games, finishing stories. I don't know. That's never been me. I don't know, but I've really, really been into Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Ooh.
I got
You have
into
a lot
that.
to go through.
Yeah, I'm only about 25 hours in, so I know I still got at least 75 hours to go in that long ass game. But when it was prime election season in October, I just fell into this really, you know, dark place, which was weird
Yeah.
because it was a high functioning dark place. And therapy for me was Fire Emblem, which is weird because that's another game that I started, put down, and then didn't play again until, 4 or 5 months later. And here we are. And yeah, I'm really curious to see where this goes because I haven't gotten to, I guess, the twist in it yet. And I don't know what the twist is and what happens with the actual houses, but
Wait, what house did you choose?
which is the Black Eagles.
Ah, okay. You're gonna have a fun time.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to pop off because it's definitely that time of year where I need like a really deep RPG. Let me get my fancy whiskey, cool out at the end of the day, and just RPG it up. Especially because this is so satisfying my Weibo spirit. So yeah, I'm having a great time with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, video games, gotta love them.
Mm-hmm.
That about does it for this, the very, 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 very first episode of Sidequest Enthusiast. It's time to save the game for another time. Until that next time, Mina, where can people find you on the interwebs?
People can find me on Twitter at Mina_rank. That's REINCK. And they can find me on BroadStreetReview.com where I do some arts and culture writing.
Hey, I know that place.
Yeah, I have a great editor there.
Yeah. I hear good things. Anairis, where can people find you?
Anairis_Q on Twitter and Instagram. I am most active on Twitter. Not so much lately because I've just kind of been busy in my own world. But yeah, I usually simp over fictional characters or meme or share announcements because my main thing is voice acting. Just the other day I got to announce my first lead role in an anime and my first lead role in general, so I usually post announcements of that sort on there first, so please follow me there. And yeah.
Dope. Yeah, I feel like every time I open social media, the first thing I see is Anairis has a new announcement. I'm like, all right, cool. I can't keep up with all her shows. I need to take off a couple weeks to catch up.
Anairis is killing it. Top of my TL.
Yeah, exactly. That's essentially
Yeah,
my
I
feed.
work too much.
Yep.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter and Insta at Kyle Literally and online at KyleVHiller.com. And you can find SQE on Twitter and Instagram at SQEcast. Thank you to Yvonne Valenza and Jonah Luma for helping design SQE, and shout outs to Porkchop on the Beat. Find out more about them on our www.sqecast.com or Sidequest Enthusiast if you feel like being an overachiever and typing out the whole thing. Mina, I love you. Anairis, I love you too.
Kyle, Anairis, I love you.
Love you.
Love all around. Listener, I love you and thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune in. We appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, which I'm not sure if that's a thing on Apple Podcasts. We'll see in episode 2. And make sure you add a friend to the SQE party so we can boogie down and go on this adventure together. I implore you all to be safe, to be love, to be water, and say thank you in advance for what's already yours.
Push up on the beat.
By the holy laws, you shall be obliterated.